Kim, that's the new one they got.
Planted in the shade.
Something along those lines.
Where'd they get this one from?
And it's,
From Milwaukee, and they gave up Vaughn.
When they
Andrew
gave
Vaughn.
when they gave him up.
Look at us.
As we approach the lawn right there, our board step up on the boards, do not sit the casket down until instructed to. Side straddle if you have to. Keep coming. You may place the casket down, we'll adjust it from here. All right.
I said hi to everybody.
I didn't.
My sunglasses, but I don't think I need them.
Won the message last night against the
Oh
Aces.
my God, it reminds me of my wedding.
Won. Gave up one hit. And the hit was a swinging buzz down the
No, they were giving it to him as he was walking down the aisle.
Aaron Savali, the guy they got from
Yes.
the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah.
Andrew Vaughn.
Sure. Sat down, so you'll have to.
I wish you were under better circumstances.
Yeah.
Rabbi, I'm going to introduce you. We're going to go ahead and get started. Okay.
Friends, our service is about to begin for Dr. Alvin Richard Freedman. I would ask if you have a cellular device. If you have a cellular device, I would ask you to please turn it to the off position. Officiating our service today will be Rabbi Gidon Isaacs from Temple Beit Shalom.
I'm just going to first invite the family and anyone wearing a ribbon to gather. Marcia.
Where do you want to go?
Just let's go over here. We'll go over here.
We're coming here. Does he have to get up? If he can, but we or we can get his walker for him to stand.
I want to invite the family, all those with the ribbon. With many of you, talked about the ritual of Kriya tearing. This is a moment to say blessing and do the tear. Of course, just to acknowledge this tearing is to create space judgment of someone passing is capital T, truth. It's not any kind of criticism or judgment of my life. It's just truth, the way of nature, and the truth that we are all mortal. So, repeat after me, Baruch. Dayan. Bottom a little, or the sides easier. It should tear pretty easy.
All right.
Yeah. You want to see.
Hold on here. All right, I got you. There you go. Oh, no.
Somebody help. Alvin is one thing. Right, not gonna touch it.
It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch. A fearful thing to love, hope, dream, to be, and oh, to lose. A fool for things this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. It is a human thing, love, a holy thing to love what death has touched. You who heal the brokenhearted and bind up their wounds, grant comfort and consolation to these mourners as they face their grief. Fill their lives with the acts of loving kindness and truth, which serve as the genuine memorial to our dear Alvin. The deep bond of love will remain unbroken. Amen. We acknowledged in these private moments before the service began, we acknowledged that deep bond of love which remains unbroken but causes a brokenness within with a ritual of tearing of the ribbon, acknowledging this loss and looking forward to the healing that will come, but will leave those who knew Alvin forever marked, forever changed, forever blessed. Welcome and thank you for being here today as we gather in the spirit of love, memory, and community to honor the life of Alvin Freedman. Today we come together to celebrate the unique and sacred journey of a life well lived and to pay tribute to a man who touched so many in such meaningful ways. We also gather here today to comfort the mourners, sister-in-law Marcia Seises and husband David, son Jason Freedman, wife Rachel, grandchildren Ryan, Asher, Mikey, and this family so close and tight-knit. We also offer our love and support to Alvin's nieces and nephews, grandnieces and nephews as well. May this service bring comfort to them and to all who mourn this great loss. In difficult times of loss, we look to the words of others to give voice and to bring comfort as well. Among them, and in particular in Judaism, we turn to the ancient words of the Psalms. In Psalm 23, we find the reminder that we are never alone, that there is always a presence there in this life. We are each other's divine presence, the love and the bonds between us as the divine presence that we strive to connect to. And in the next phase of this journey, we reassure ourselves that even in the mysterious beyond, there is a shepherd, a caring, loving presence taking care. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai ro'i lo echsar, binot eshe yarbitzeni, al mei minuchot inaleni. Nafshi shovev, nafshi shovev, yancheni bemagle tzedek leman shemo. Gam ki elech מגץ על מוות, לא ירא כי אתה עמדי, שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני, תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי, דשנת ושמן ראשי כוסי רוויה, אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. Our rabbis taught that there are three crowns: the crowns of Torah, the crown of priesthood, and the crown of royalty. But they emphasize that the crown of a good name exceeds them all. The book of Ecclesiastes says, Tov Shem Mishemen Tov. A good name is to be treasured above precious oil. Wealth, health, even life passes away, but a good name lives forever. It is this view that the Talmud teaches. Monuments need not be erected for the righteous. Their deeds are their memorials. They will be remembered and revered for the kindness they have shown and for the love they have given. They are shining examples of what it means to be a mensch. We honor the memory of one such mensch as Alvin Freedman with words of memory and tribute. I'd like to invite his son, Jason Freedman. But I'd like to invite his sister-in-law, Marcia. One detail we didn't discuss first.
Is this at the right? Does everybody hear me? Yes. All right, good. Do I? Okay. We are here today to celebrate the life of my sister's beloved husband and one of my lifelong best friends, Alvin Freedman. I want you all to know how much I value knowing and loving Alvin for almost my whole life. And you know, I always found Alvin to be a really funny guy. I think I knew him the longest of any living person. I got into this special category when my sister got a call from our aunt asking if she would take an unexpected vacant position at Camp Walden as a summer counselor. My aunt and her family had been going to this unique vacation venue where the parents lived close by but separate from their kids who attended this sleepaway camp adjacent to the resort. I was not happy about my sister leaving for the summer, but I did not have a say in the matter. When she came home at the end of the summer, I found out she had met someone, and he was soon coming for a visit. What I didn't know was that Alvin had been a counselor at Camp Walden before and was a favorite of my aunts and my 3 cousins, who were the fortunate recipients of such a wonderful summer experience. And as reported by my cousin Jonathan, when we were sharing memories of Alvin, at 8 years old, Cousin Jonathan said when he was 8 years old that he was very taken aback to find his favorite counselor hanging out in that special way with his cousin Ellen. Both Alvin and Ellen often said they had the best time that summer. Of course they did, because that was when they met and fell in love. For their whole lives, they were devoted to one another, to their families, and to their work, which was always about caring for and helping others. They were soulmates. The match was Beshert, a match made in heaven. It's no wonder she fell for him, because just like my father, he was a really funny guy. Alvin was from Philadelphia and was living in Philly finishing his bachelor's degree. They had to wait to be wed until he finished school, so they worked out a pattern of back and forth visits until they married. On his first visit, I was leery and worried about how he was going to intrude into my very close relationship with my sister. But I remember how Alvin fit right in with our family. He was funny like my father. He was smart and educated. He was working toward a good career. He was thoughtful, kind, and caring, and Jewish. What more could any parent ask for? He won their hearts. I was not as sure, but it wasn't long before I was rooting for him too. I soon became relieved to see that he, like my sister, always wanted to include me in most of the things they did. We went to movies, museums, festivals, Shakespeare country, and they even took me along to Washington, D.C. when President Kennedy died. I remember when my friends needed dates for my Sweet 16 party. He came to the rescue and supplied a whole bunch for the event. And I always remember how all the good times were even better because of him, and that he was a really funny guy. After they married, they moved to Chicago as Alvin began his PhD studies. It wasn't long before I came for what I thought would be a short visit, but they couldn't get rid of me quite that fast. I had recently graduated from high school and had an uninteresting job in New York. I took an unplanned chance and applied for a job at the University of Chicago as the business manager for the computer center. I got the job. In those days, the computers were the size of a large room. That's how old I am, and don't tell anyone. Everyone who needed to use the computer had to sign up at the business center for an appointment. The computer was affectionately named by the professors and students who used it as the Maniac. And as it became more and more in demand, our office became more and more busy till one day, my boss asked me to hire an assistant, which brought Diane to my door. I knew right away she was a good fit as a work partner, but I didn't know she would become a lifelong friend, sister to my future husband, and a beloved aunt to my children and grandchildren. Most of you know, although some may not, that we lost my dear sister-in-law in the very recent past on July 7th. She was a bright light in our lives. She was the older twin, 5 minutes, and David always said he respected his elder and listened to his elders. She was, in fact, a very devoted and loving sister, and we shared a special bond of friendship with her and her wonderful husband, John. Her memory will always be a blessing. Like Alvin, she lives in our hearts. So Ellen brought me to Alvin, and Diane brought me to David, and I brought David to Alvin. Together, the two of them developed a strong bond of friendship. They were like two peas in a pod, both with a keen sense of humor. The two were great buddies right off the bat, and I mean that literally, as they sat together side by side, watching their teams lose. Oh yeah, sometimes they won. And watching politics together, rooting for the same Democratic side, which was much more fun when they used to win. And they watched movies together, and of course, sang together. The much-loved Harvard mathematician Tom Lehr's humorous and wicked lyrics satirizing the world. And later, when they met our dear friend Jim Truran, it became a trio, singing away, all memorized and sung by heart. It is ironic that Tom Lehr died this week. May they rest in peace together. And Alvin led the way with his humor, songs, and stories because, as we all know, Alvin was really a funny guy. The four of us often lived near one another, although Ellen and Alvin did move around quite a bit. Even when we didn't live close by, we spent time together traveling the world, visiting relatives, and sharing friends. And we were together even when we were apart. When I think of Alvin, I think of the many hobbies he had and the many skills he developed in addition to his career as a psychologist and hospital administrator. He always liked fishing and poker, but he became a skilled photographer, a yummy cheesecake maker, and a great smoker. Oh no, not with cigarettes, but with cuts of meat like brisket and turkey. Delicious. And Alvin had the most amazing skills as a carpenter and tile setter. Both he and Ellen worked as a team, designing and installing tile, not just for themselves, but for family and friends alike, including myself, who enjoys the product of their labors every day when I look at the beautiful tiles in my kitchen. And even more importantly, Alvin will be remembered for his stories. As Judy Adams pointed out, he will be remembered not just for his good works as the director of Valley Hospital in Owensboro, Kentucky, but for always being ready to share a story or spontaneously burst into song. Everyone who knew Alvin and Ellen knew they liked to sing, especially the old Broadway musicals. And David bought Ellen a t-shirt that says, "Caution, prone to sudden outbursts of song," which Alvin was wearing when I visited him not too long ago. And Alvin, even in this past year of decline, would often burst into song when his nurses paid him a visit, keeping them smiling and entertained. But now, I want to finally tell you about the really most memorable thing about Alvin, in case I haven't mentioned it already. Alvin was really a funny guy. And everyone knew it. Everybody knows it. Whomever I spoke to about him immediately said, "He was so funny. He always made me laugh." And he kept his humor even to the end. His hospice nurse remarked how much she enjoyed visiting Alvin because he was so funny. She loved talking with him and hearing his jokes and stories. She missed hearing them when he could no longer share them. And I know that knowing that he will always be remembered as that really funny guy would make him happy today. I know this because not that long ago, we had a heart-to-heart. And he told me that when he passes, he wants a celebration just like the one we had for Ellen. And he hopes that someone will say, "You know, that guy Alvin, he was a really funny guy." And I'm saying it now. His wit never skipped a beat. He had a funny joke about everything. He always made us laugh. Thank you, Alvin, for always making us laugh. After all, laughter is the best medicine.
Thank you. I'd like to call forward son Jason.
So, I don't have a big prepared speech, and I haven't known my father as long as my aunt has. So, just a few, yeah. Oh, you can't hear. Okay, we can do this. All right. So, as I was saying, I don't have a big prepared speech, and I didn't know my dad as long as my aunt has by any stretch. There are a couple things that I did want to say. So, first of all, and most importantly, I just wanted to thank everyone for coming today and honestly making my dad's life what it was. He absolutely loved having friends and family around. He absolutely, when you look at his life, especially over the last 30 or 40 years, which is most of what I knew, it really, I think, came alive because of the people that he was surrounded with. And he came alive when he was with people. So that's the main thing I wanted to say, because I think it was if you asked him, that and that I was always a funny guy are the two things that he defined his life by. Obviously, for me, he was a great dad. And I guess one little story is when I was a teenager my friends would come to visit my dad and get stories from him and get life advice from him. And in fact, one summer when I was in my junior year of high school, I spent the summer in Pittsburgh at college, and I called my parents one day, and two of my friends were over at our house. I wasn't there. So he was always both able to give advice in a way that didn't feel like he was talking down to people, and that was useful. And I think as his son, it absolutely shaped the way I look at the world and just kind of my life as well. So that and bad dad jokes are the most important things. Anyway, thank you all for coming. And that's thank you.
In times of loss, we look to our Jewish tradition, connect the life of the one we have lost to the eternal values and truths that are at the heart of Judaism. We look to our sacred Torah and to the holy times of commemoration and celebration that are upon us, that's at any given season. Today is Tisha B'Av, a day of commemoration, the 9th day of the Hebrew month of Av. In ancient times, the Jewish people twice suffered the catastrophic loss of their religious and political center in Jerusalem on this date. We commemorate those tragic losses through a day of mourning. The rabbis living after the destruction saw Jews going to great lengths to curtail celebrations and enjoyment of life in an effort to mourn sufficiently that loss. Striving to create a balance between grief and embracing life, they said, not to mourn at all is impossible, but to mourn too much is also not feasible. Like the ancient Jews, our world is shaken as we face great loss, the passing of Alvin Freedman, a revered center, a mentor, teacher, and patriarch. Also, like our forebears, we must carry on. This credo of the rabbis applies to us in this moment. In the story of how our people moved forward after the destruction of the temple, we find a model that is familiar to any who knew Alvin. The Jewish people moved on by focusing on function over form, meaning they didn't cling to the form of religious life centered around one holy temple in Jerusalem. They had the wisdom to focus on the function of that temple, connection with the divine, a connection which inspired Jews to always be guided by their highest impulses towards kindness, goodness, and justice. This is how Alvin looked at the world. With any project, he wanted to be first clear on the goals. Then he'd go about figuring out how to attain them. This is why he hated working in systems where metrics were set before anything else was established. How could you know what you needed to measure in order to gauge success if you didn't know what your goals were or how you were going to attain them? Why set the metric for success, for example, of having a child sit still for 30 minutes in a stultifying classroom, when your goal is educating the child who may learn best by never ever even setting foot in a classroom? This is why Alvin's favorite work experience was in Kentucky, where he founded Children's Psychiatric Hospital, which allowed him to be part of the design from the ground up. Not everyone could work in this way, but Alvin had an incredible mind that had the capacity for great precision while never growing too attached to the precise details. If something went awry, if there was a misstep, he brought tremendous flexibility and creativity to his work, allowing him to course correct by trying something new. Not everyone could do this. Many might lose sight of the ultimate goal, but not Alvin. He brought the sharpness of focus of a master marksman in the eye of a professional photographer. Many of you may not know this, but he was both of these things. An expert shot, something he first learned teaching riflery and archery at camp, but honed on the shooting range, winning several competitions over the years, ultimately reaching its height when he had to shoot woodpeckers off his house with his neighbor in Kentucky. Don't worry, no animals were harmed in the filming of this scene. They didn't hit any, but they had the skill. And he had an in-home darkroom, captured the glorious beauty of foreign destinations and mundane family moments alike. He was a man possessed of great vision in all senses of the word. This week's Torah portion is the beginning of the book of Deuteronomy. And in that book, Moses begins to tell the tale of the Israelites in the desert. It tells us that it was in the 40th year that he begins, on the first day of the 11th month, that he begins to talk. Well, Moses starts to tell the story, and he doesn't shut up for about 31 chapters. Alvin, too, liked to spin a yarn. And in that, he was like our great teacher, Moses. We also find in this week's portion that we are adjured to impress the words, the teachings of the Torah upon our children, to focus on our children, to teach them. And this was certainly Alvin's way. Child-centered, a natural educator, and a natural learner. How are we supposed to do this? The Torah tells us that when we are asked by the younger generation, these decrees and laws and rules that God enjoined upon us, explain them. Tells us, and this may be familiar from the Passover Seder, that you shall say, we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and Adonai freed us with a mighty hand. In other words, when they ask you about the laws, tell them a story. Alvin taught through anecdotes. He was naturally curious and wanted nothing more than to instill that curiosity in others. As soon as he was old enough to teach, as a camp counselor, he would do this. So, for instance, while on the surface, he was keeping his campers occupied on a rainy day with an exciting little science experiment of carbonated soda cans. It was really a lesson in pressure vessels. He asked his campers for predictions, taught them to develop hypotheses, to observe evidence, to theorize. Even before he learned it formally, he intuitively used scientific method. And he took an experiential approach to education long before that was a thing. In this week's chapter portion, we also read about cities of refuge, the need to provide safe haven for an Israelite who may have accidentally killed another person, protection from vengeful forces out to get them. Alvin, too, never took a punitive approach to wrongdoing. He gave the benefit of the doubt, saw the best in people. He looked for systemic fixes to societal ills, recognized that the role that circumstance and environment played was crucial, and one who did not wrong was not irredeemable. Justice should not be punitive, but rehabilitative. Not only did he do this in his work, but it also saw expression in his family life. Jason once got an in-school suspension. He was an excellent student. It was really unjust. It was a conflict with the teacher. Well, the in-school suspension meant that homework was forbidden for that duration. To which Alvin said, "That's so stupid. You're punishing students the wrong way. The ones who've been delinquent and are looking to get out of work, they're rewarded. The ones who happen to be there for mischief or a disagreement, but they want to be on the right path, they're being punished. They can't do their homework." He took it all the way to the school board. He always fought for what was right. Like Moses, he could sometimes have a temper, but also, like Moses, who always defended the Israelites, he'd recover and never hold a grudge. He'd get cranky and frustrated, but he'd later say, "Why did I do that?" coming to his senses. And finally, Moses in this portion complains about how hard it was to lead, how difficult the people made her life. Well, there's nothing Alvin liked more than a good kvetch. And finally, one other touchstone this time of year on Friday will be Tu B'Av, the 15th of the month of Av, a time when we are told the maidens dressed in white went out into the outskirts of Jerusalem, and the young men would as well, to find their matches, to find love. Alvin had such a big heart, so many cherished relationships. There was the storied and glorious partnership with his soulmate Ellen. He of the corny dad jokes, she rolling her eyes, but secretly laughing in appreciation. Some couples commit to laugh together, and for the sake of that, they tolerate each other. Not Alvin and Ellen. They were devoted to each other, warts and all. They were in this together. And one of his grandnieces shared a beautiful story. You always see the public face of a couple, but what goes on behind closed doors? Well, one time, just a few years ago, while Talia was in their home on the couch in the living room, unbeknownst to them, they kind of breezed their way through, holding hands, singing sweet nothings together, giving each other little kisses. No better testament to how they truly felt. He adored his family. As Jason said to me, we can never know what it's like to have another father, but I can't imagine one better than him. If he was a teacher, guide, friend, and leader to many, none more so than Jason. With our offspring, it's always a chicken-egg question, the things that we love and the interests we shared. Well, they shared so many, and who knows which one got into what first, but fishing, cooking. The night Alvin passed, Jason was told by Rachel, the bananas have turned. He needed no more cue than to dive into baking a banana bread in the tradition of Alvin. Reading, sci-fi and fantasy and straight nonfiction, science. They had their own father-son book club. They'd read the same book and afterwards compare notes, discussing it together. They always found a new book to read, driven by Alvin's unspoken credo, which he instilled in Jason. What are you curious about next? We heard the stories of how approachable and insightful he was, giving advice that Jason was generous enough to share Alvin with his friends as an advisor. And when Rachel came into the picture, acceptance may not have been a given, but a good Stan Freiberg reference was all it took to gain entry. Some good 1960s Jewish humor. And she was yet another one of his pupils, learning more from her conversations with him than any class she took in project design. Alvin was an only child, but not without siblings. Marcia and David, sister and brother. In law was an unnecessary addition there. as we heard, in their early years. And when they moved back too, for the last 2 decades, they did everything together. In between, there were many visits back and forth and travel all over the world. He loved his nieces and nephews, grandchildren, and grandnieces and nephews, reveled in their accomplishments. None were too small, whether it was a picky grandniece trying and liking oysters Rockefeller, or flying to upstate New York to attend Grandparents' Day at the elite boarding school his granddaughter attended. In the last few years, as often happens at the end of our lives, the roles reversed and they took care of him. One time, Ryan coming into his apartment, finding him on the floor. Clearly he had fallen, but Alvin, trying to play it off in that casual, "I'm okay," to which Ryan said, "With all due respect, no, you're not." And he helped him up and got him to where he needed to be. He had friends that he loved, always a crew, a squad, guys from the neighborhood that he schlepped from Philly to New York City to be dates for young Marcia at her sweet 16 and to risk concussion sleeping under the grand piano in their apartment. And everywhere else he went, colleagues who would probably object to being called colleagues. They were friends. They followed him from one professional opportunity to another, which speaks to the kind of supervisor he was. He reveled in his role as a mentor. And as you may have heard somewhere before, he was funny. To the end. Not long before he passed, getting his nails cut in the ER, even getting it a little bit snipped, he was unfazed. When the helper who did this finished, he concluded with a flourish, "I'd like to thank the Academy." And just a few days before he passed, I visited him, and he roused just for a little bit, enough to say to me when I came, "I'm not on the short list." I said, "For what? The Oscars, the Emmys?" I said, "If it's the short list for love and respect, look at all the people visiting you. Look at all the people who care about you. Look at what you've done." And for the first and maybe last time in my life knowing Jews, he managed to say, "You're right, Rabbi." He had a little bit of a sparkle about him, even then, that glint of mischief that we will all miss so much, but we remember it powerfully. Any who touched him, that memory will always be for a blessing. We remember with our prayers, we express our wishes. And in expressing those wishes, we give ourselves our guidance, what we need to do next. In the prayer, El Malei Rachamim, we express the wish that Alvin's soul will be bound up with the souls of the living. And in reminding ourselves that and saying that prayer, we tell ourselves what we do next. We tell stories. We keep that memory alive. Every time we gather from after this service, for the rest of time, as long as we're together, we share those memories. As you're able, I invite you to rise as I chant El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim, שוכן במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה, תחת כנפי השכינה. אם קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת אברהם בן משה וגיטל שהלך לעולמו. בעל הרחמים יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו. ונאמר, and we say, Amen. You may be seated. The dust returns to the earth as it was. The spirit returns to God who gave it. It is only the house of the spirit which we now lay within the earth. The spirit itself cannot die. O God, help us to understand that grief and love go hand in hand, that the pain which loss inflicts is the measure of a love stronger than death. Though we cry in the anguish of our hearts, may we be like children who know that their parent is near and who cling unafraid to their trusted hand. In this spirit, O God, do we commit all that is precious to us to your keeping. Adonai Natan v'Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. Adonai has given, Adonai has taken away. Blessed be the name of Adonai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher yatzar etchem betuvo vehemit etchem badin, venata betochechem chaye olam. Baruch atah Adonai dayan ha'emet. We praise you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who forms us in the divine image, who nourishes and sustains us in your goodness. You cause all of us to die according to your wisdom. You know and number every soul. You implant immortal life within us. Blessed are you, Adonai, the true judge. In the Jewish tradition, to shovel dirt into the grave is a mitzvah, a righteous act which we do without any hope of reward. With this act, we take on the responsibility of caring for our loved one until the very end. Our loved ones deserve to be buried by kind hands, knowing hands, sorrowful hands. You are invited to participate in this mitzvah and to further demonstrate your sorrow. If you'd like to observe this custom, the reluctance with which we perform this righteous act, you can use the back of the shovel to pour a bit of dirt into the grave. This is a painful act, but one born of love and compassion for Alvin, who has meant so much to us. So we will, in a moment, the casket will be lowered. We will recite Horner's Kaddish, and then you'll be invited to place some earth into the grave. As you're able, I invite you to rise as we first recite Horner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah ve'alma divrach yurtei ve'amlich malchutei b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael b'agala uv'zman kariv v'imru Yeh shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'me'amaya Yitparach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh Vita dar, vita le, vita lal, shmed kudisha, richu. Le'la mikob birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all Israel, to which we say, Amen. You may be seated. And as the casket is lowered, I'll sing from Psalm 121, a psalm of consolation. I lift my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come in a dark moment? From Adonai, creator of heaven and earth. We are all part of creation, all holy, eternal. Esaenai el hearim me'ain yavu ezri. Esaenai el hearim me'ain yavu ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai ose shamayim va'aretz. Ezri me'im Adonai ose shamayim va'aretz. Amen.
Friends, if anybody would like to come on the other side,
That one or two.
Wait, they're gonna come out.
Friends, following the giving everyone an opportunity to place some earth, we will conclude our service. Shiva will take place at the Freedman Residence, 303 Wisteria Drive in Olympia Fields. That's immediately following the interment until 7:30. Those of you who are online, that information is available on our website. The family should know no more sorrow. We're concluding our live stream at this time.